chosen to be that year's Minnesota's Social Studies Teacher of the Year by a committee of my peers. I still teach as a volunteer at the Benedictine Health Center and at the University for Seniors at UMD. And Dave has an interesting story to tell us today. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Take it away.
Okay, thank you for coming to such a unique class. One thing I'm going to say that's an advantage for all of us, first of all, we're older. So we've lived a longer life and we've got a good perspective of time. The other thing is, maybe if you've raised children, you have had some impact on how your daughters or sons have developed morally. And when I first taught this class, it's really from the work of a psychologist by the name of Lawrence Kohlberg. Lawrence Kohlberg died at the age of 60. He did most of his work around the middle 50s, early or late 40s. And what Lawrence Kohlberg did is he decided that he would like to analyze how does anybody in the world acquire a moral sense of right and wrong. And we all know that people have moral codes of ethics, and they may be spiritually based, they may be secular based. The point I'm trying to make, even an atheist could be a very moral person. What Kohlberg wanted to do was find out how does a child, a child over in this level, I'll show you in a minute, how does a young adult, like a 15, 16, 17-year-old, how do they advance in their concept of what's right or wrong? And then over here, I have some stuff that'll show you where, how does an adult and beyond adult, our age, how do they acquire a sense of right and wrong? What Kohlberg is doing, he doesn't really matter what moral code the people he's interviewing have. He's curious about how did they acquire it? How did they get it? And so he did a study, and how he went about this, he set up some stories. He called them the Heinz dilemmas. And what it was is he'd bring in a young person, maybe 8, 10, whatever, and he'd present them a issue. Here's a real common one. Heinz is a man, he's married, he's got a wife, and she happens to be dying of cancer. And he's doing everything he can to try to save her. And in town, a druggist or a pharmacist invents this drug that can save his beautiful wife. And so he goes over to try to buy it. Well, it cost the druggist $200 to make, and he was selling it for $2,000. And what the issue is, Heinz goes to him and says, gee, I'd like to buy it, but I don't have $2,000. I don't have it right now. I could pay you, but it would be in supplemental pay over a year. What do you think? And the pharmacist says, no. And then what Kohlberg would do to his guest is ask him, well, what do you think about that? You think that's right? What would you do? And what he did is listen to the responses. And after interviewing, it's always the same case. Heinz here, Heinz as a 15-year-old talking, Heinz as an adult, and he was trying to find patterns, things they had in common. And so he came up with a 3-stage theory. And what I'm going to do is walk you through my life with a couple of stories of my moral development in step 1, what I was like, where I was at. Then I'll give you a 2 from my life, and then I'll give you a 3 from my life. I'd like to think Dave Griffin has moved from 1 to 2 to 3. Now, I know that you've had not the same experience as I had, but very similar at that time. Okay. Now remember, his model doesn't care what your moral code of ethics is. You could be a Christian, you could be a Buddhist, you could be a Hindu. Irrelevant. It's just how you think about those moral codes and how you apply them. Well, let me start, and I'll show you one, and it's this alligator. I don't know if you can see it, but when I was about 6, I lived in Superior, and I slept with my brother Marvin, who was 10 years older than me, okay? And he was 16, I was 6. And I'd go to bed at night, and once in a while, my bed would shake. And I thought, what's that? Oh my God, what's that? And I went out of bed. I actually peed my pants. That's the true story. I was so afraid. I thought, oh, what's going on? So I went to ask my mother. My dad at that time had left. They were divorced. And I said, Mom, I said, my bed's moving. Oh, she said, you're dreaming. And I thought, dreaming? I'm not dreaming. The bed's moving. And so she came in and she said, look, the bed's not moving. It's not moving. Mom, the bed moved. I know it moved. Well, this went on a couple of times, and finally I was getting no help. So I convinced myself this alligator was in under my bed. Something had to do with it. And the back of it, this little thing and the big mouth, he was moving the bed underneath me. So what I did is I went to the church and I got some holy water. Now, I don't know if you're Christian or Catholic, but they did everything with holy water. I mean, they sprinkled it on cats and dogs, and they put it on statues, and they flicked it all over the place. I stuttered real bad when I was a kid. I even gargled on this stuff, hoping that it would save my stuttering. It worked. As soon as I talked to somebody, then I had to get some more water. But I went and I sprinkled this. By the way, do you remember the old irons when you used to iron and they didn't have the sprayer? Well, my mother had a beer bottle and she had a sprinkler on, and she sprinkled the clothes in iron. And then she got me ironing, and I burned it intentionally, trying to get out of it, and she wouldn't buy it. So I'd go to bed and sprinkle this all over the bed. Well, my brother, he would come home, Marv would come home, and he'd say, what the heck? What are you peeing in the bed? What's wrong with you? And I said, no, it's a gator. It's a gator. Well, what was I at? Where was I thinking? What was right? What was wrong? How was I trying to live my life? You know what I was trying to do? I was trying to stay alive. That's what I was trying to do. The gator was going to get me. And if I put my feet over the bed, suck me right under that bed. I know he would. So I thought, and then when I go to bed, I wouldn't walk on the floor. I would actually step by the door and I'd jump into bed. You know how many years I did that? It's ridiculous. But what was I doing? Save myself, protect myself. I needed some assistance. What is good? What's bad? What's good? Keep me alive. What's bad? This gator. And so to end the story a little bit on this one, if I'm in the military at 18, I'm over here and I'm coming home, but we moved out of that house. And the guy that bought the house, George LaValle, he said, hey, Griff. So I pulled over, hey, come on in, have a cup of coffee with me. Here it is. So I'm sitting at that house that I grew up in with this cup of coffee from George. And guess what? The coffee cup goes. And I thought, what? What is that? I said, the gator. The gator. And he looked at me. What do you mean, the gator? I said, what's moving it was the trains. I lived over in Superior by the ore docks. And when the trains, you remember the iron ore and the ships? He said, oh, every once in a while when a train goes up, it slips and it vibrates. And I said, it vibrates? Yeah, especially that bedroom. Oh, I thought to myself, that's it. So what was I thinking? What was good? What was wrong? What was right? What was bad? What was right? Keep you alive. What was good? Holy water. Now, I don't know if you people use, I'd like to ask you, well, you can tell me later whether you, I gargled as I was, and guess what? It did save me. So I became a holy water fan. Absolutely. I go to church at St. Francis, just douse myself with it, gargle as I say. I'll give you one more story and then we'll stop. Here's a ball. This happened to me and I was about 8, maybe 7, and I got my glove and I got my ball. And I'm outside our garage and I'm throwing it at the garage door and trying pretending I'm a shortstop on a baseball team. And I throw it. Well, my mom, Emily, my mom comes out and she's a short little woman, packed a punch though, because she could really hit you. I mean, and she did. But anyway, she goes to me, what are you doing? Don't be throwing that. By the way, if you miss, you're going to hit the garage window and you're going to break the window. I said, no, Ma, no, Mama. So she jumps in her little black Nash Rambler. She takes off her East End Cafe. So I'm sitting there and I'm throwing the ball and it's bouncing back. And guess what? I hit the damn window. Crash! Holy moly. And here it is. Glass. And here is the brick. And this is what comes out. So I went, I got to get rid of this because I'm going to get my butt spanked bad. And she would even whack you. Ma wasn't just on the butt. She'd give you a snap. And so I thought, I got to get rid of this. Got to get rid of this. So I went, I took the glass out of the window and took a brick and started smashing it. And guess what I did? I hit my wrist and it went into the wrist. And now blood is blah, 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 what the? So I wrapped this thing around my wrist. God damn it. And I wrapped it. Now I got this glass, I hid that. And then I'm thinking, oh my God. Well, guess what? It got infected. And for about 5 days, I can't sleep. It's all swelled up. It's turning red. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, I'm crying because I can't sleep. And my mother says, what's the matter? And I said, Mom, I didn't mean to break it. I didn't mean to break it. I didn't ball slipped in it. She says, what's wrong with your hand? I says, I broke the glass. She said, oh my God. She said, we got to go to Dr. Picard. Well, Picard was like 8 feet tall. And he was a mean man. Jeez. I mean, he never smiled. And I went to Picard. I sat there. He goes, big guy, he goes, what did you do? And I said, I broke the glass. He said, what'd you do that for? And I thought, oh, God, just give me a shot. Well, he gave me a penicillin shot or something, and I still got the scars from it. But what was right? What was wrong? Where was I at in my mindset? What was good? What was bad? Now, what Kohlberg suggests, people in step 1, you've been there, you got stories. I'm not the only weirdo. And what he's doing, a good thing is anything, it's like a cookie, it's like a carrot, it's like a thank you, it's like a kiss. And I get a lot of those, and that's good. And if what's bad, anything that gets me pain, anything, that's it. Good, sweet, good hugs, good kisses, good love. Bad, ouch, 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 don't do that. I didn't care about my sisters. They were in the way. I mean, they just were trouble because I was self-centered, isolated, and focused on Dave Griffin only. Now, let's stop there before we go on to a level 2. This is level 1. Now, would anybody like to share maybe a similar example from your life where you saw life as basically cookies or spankings? That's your whole frame of mind about what's a good boy or a good girl? Does anybody like to share a story, or am I the only one that's got these weird things? I'm willing to listen.
You can unmute yourself if you want to talk. Anybody? Well, I was an only child,
A little bit.
and I had trouble with math. And in about second or third grade, my mother actually went out and bought a math book thinking she could help me study. Well, my mother didn't have a lot of patience, and I hated math. And she would say, whenever she'd catch me at home, she'd want to do some math with me. So I remember she was looking for me, and I hid in the house. And I hid so well, she couldn't find me. But being a good girl, even though I got away with it, I think I snuck out of the house and went to play with friends. I felt very guilty. I don't know if that's a only child syndrome or if it's just because I was a girl.
Is there anyone else who'd like to share a story? You're kind of, remember, in step one, you're all by yourself. You look at life from either a pleasure or a painful experience. What's good is what's rewarded with a cookie or a hug or a kiss. What's bad is what's spanked, what's frowned upon. My mother and dad responded differently on that. But when my dad left when I was 8, it was only mom at home. And mom's view of right or wrong was either a spanking or a slap. That's the way it was. Now, what Kohlberg's suggesting, whether you're Chinese, whether you're from India, you're from America, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Buddhist, whether you're an atheist, that's where little people around the world start with their concept of what's right and what's wrong. Now, some kids, because of injury to their illness, are stuck in that frame of mind for the rest of their life because their brain doesn't develop so it can move to a 2. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those poor people who are stuck there and they can't move out because the brain isn't capable of moving and growing. Now remember, Kohlberg's theory says it takes about 15 to 16 years on a normal brain to be able to develop so that it can move to a step 2 or a step 3. And if you've got anybody in your family who is handicapped intellectually, you can appreciate what I'm talking about. They just can't move forward because his model is based on cognitive development, the brain. Let's go to 2. This two stories help me here. In step 2, I'm now moved on from 1. I'm actually aware of other people and other people's interests. I actually like my sister Bonnie. Okay, I really do. You know, I have friends of mine, and I realize that my friends in their home, they have different rules and regulations than my house. My mother smoked. Other people would say, you can't smoke. And so I'd say, well, my mom does. My mom, is that bad? So, but in here, I was a Boy Scout. A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, 30. And so I had all these little things that I was taught. I had little merit badges. And my mother was putting me through a moral code. At the church, I got the thou shalt nots, the 10 commandments. Those were things you shouldn't do. Well, the Boy Scouts had things you should do. And I actually liked the Boy Scout one better than the other one because it was something I thought I could learn. I could be trustworthy. I could be loyal. I could be helpful. And I got little merit badges telling me that I was doing that. So I'm aware of others. I'm aware of other people's rules and regulations. And then something happened. I was in the 8th grade, St. Francis School. And we would go home, and there was a house right on the corner by a hill, and it was abandoned. And Joey and Jerry and Keenan and Coonan, all these guys, it was abandoned, but we could get in the house through the coal chute. You know, remember the old houses, they had coal chutes where they put coal? Well, they had boarded up this house, but we could get in the house. We would crawl down the coal chute. We'd actually get black. And we go in there, and inside the house, we had a garbage can. And we made a little fire because it was in the winter, it was cold. And we make a little fire. Then we go out, get the snow, bring it back, put out the fire. And we smoke Raleigh cigarettes. Maybe you guys smoked them too, be honest. You were smoking and playing around. Anyway, we'd smoke these cigarettes. And we stole them from Joey Jader's dad. Joey was a bad guy. He was my buddy, but we were bad. We were in there smoking everything. So we leave right after school. We're all Catholics. I mean, that's St. Francis. Everybody's Catholics. Wouldn't steal Christ off their house. You know, we're really good kids. Keo, who's a bad guy, he's even an altar boy. And that's how bad he's going to be. So anyway, we went in, set the fire, left, went out. I'm down at Central Park with Ethel Brady. She was my girlfriend, 8th grade. Ethel Brady, beautiful girl. Even remember her phone number, 22324. Ethel Brady, 22324. So I'm down there, we're holding hands and hugging and walking down the street. We're all love. All of a sudden, a cop car comes by. And he stops. He says, "Your name, Griffin?" I said, "Yeah." And I'm stuttering. Yeah. He said, "Get in the car." I said, "Get in the car." I said, "Ethel, I'll be back to save you." You know, I don't know. Ethel leaves. I get in the car, and it's all these guys. There's 6 of them in the car, packed in the back. And one of them, hearing, goes, "Don't say a word." I said, "This is the house burned down." What? He said, "The house burned down. The house burned down. Yeah, it burned down." So I said, "Okay." We go to the police department down in Superior. Guess what? For the next 3 weeks, every day after school, the cops are taking us down to the department. And they're interviewing us. And I'd go in there and they said, "Do you smoke?" "No, I don't smoke." "You drink?" "Were you in the house?" "Well, yes," I said. "We went in there. We went through the coal chute. We had a little fun, but we..." And the guy says, "Well, where did you start the fire?" I said, "The fire. I know nothing about a fire. We had no fire. We never did that, blah, blah, blah." Well, folks, there were 6 of us, huh? So the cop, who's a smarty, says, "Listen, kid, get in that closet." So there's a closet in this room where they're interviewing him. And it's got these little slats. You can hear things. He goes, "Get in there, shut up, kneel down, and listen." So I get in there, and I'm kneeling down, and in comes George, and in comes Gary, and in comes his brother Larry. And they're all interviewing, and they're saying, "Do you smoke?" "Yep." "Do you light a fire?" "Yep." And I'm thinking, what are you guys doing? I am trying to be loyal to you, and you're squealing like a pig. And I'm thinking, oh no. So then he gets me out and he says, "Now, Griffin, why don't you come clean and admit you burnt the house down?" I said, "Hold it." I said, I didn't do it. I said, "We had a fire, yeah, but we put it out." He says, "When did you go up in the bedrooms?" Bedrooms? We never had a bedroom. There's no lights up there. We couldn't go up there. It was dark. One of the 6 guys burnt it. He was a newspaper boy. And he went there at night and torched it. He ended up going to jail eventually. I think he killed himself eventually around age 30, honest to God. but he was a torturer and he loved lighting fires. Now, what is going on here? Finally, I'm saying, hey, I didn't do it. And you know what the nun said? The nun said, you can trust George because he's an altar boy. I thought, altar boy? This guy would torch things. Now, what's a level 2? Where was I at here? I actually had friends. When I was back here, I was just David, all by myself, little selfish David, looking for a cookie. Here, I've got friends, but I also realized the cops are a different group. They got guns. So I knew that I wanted to be loyal. I wanted to be in. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to belong. But then what group? What group should I endorse? These guys, I go to law. I go to jail. So I'm aware of the group. Here, I'm self-centered. Here, I'm a little smarter. I know what a good boy and a good girl is. By the way, all you ladies and men, there was a time when you were told you were a good little girl and a good little boy. And what do girls say? They're sugar and spice and everything nice. The little boys are rats and tails and puppy dogs, whatever they were. And so my sisters, they all behaved, they wore lipstick, but they were out there tempting boys. Boys would be lined up on our front of our door, especially for Bonnie Malter, and I'm not talking to you on this one now. But anyway, so what you have here is a code of ethics. What the psychologists called it is the good boy, good girl syndrome. You're aware of other people. You want to be part of those people. You're no longer self-centered. You actually want to be a good boy. My little badges, merit badges, and little awards. I was a good boy, a good girl. And I lied like a pig because I wanted to be part of this group, not the cop group, but my buddies. But I knew these guys existed, the cops, they had guns, and oh my God. What do you think? How many here know what I'm talking about, a level 2? Level 2, your reciprocity. I've got your back, you've got my back. We're in this together, buddy. Now, this is typical for most people. This is codes of law. These are police. They enforce the rules. When I joined the Army, I had another code. It was, I promised to do this, and that. And I knew if I broke these, I was old enough to go to jail. Here, what are you going to do? Put a 5-year-old in jail? I mean, it's ridiculous. So, a level 2. I am in the group. I do have codes. I know what a good boy and girl are supposed to be. The nuns would tell you. In fact, I would go to confession and get rid of all that crap. And that was good for me. Exactly, I lied. I lied in the confession because I stuttered. And I didn't want the priest to know it was me that did it. So actually, I'd go into the confessional. Bless me. Oh, gee. And he'd go, oh, hi, Dave. And I'd, oh, now what am I going to tell him? The truth? I would actually lie in the confessional. Well, that's really a sick person. But I did that. But I will tell you, a good boy and a good girl would get rid of that sins, whatever you want to call it, but I could get rid of them. And I'd start afresh. And I'd go right back and laugh at Bonnie and make fun of Kathy. And I would do that. But I could kind of recover, okay? But I was aware. Now, I'm going to go to a 3, and then we'll back up, okay? Now, a 3, I'm going to move this in front of you. 3. I'm 18 years old, and I got a globe here. I hope you can see it. I got some spoons, and I'm in the military, and I'm 18. I'm in jump school. I'm going to be a parachutist, okay? And I'm at Fort Benning, Georgia in jump school. It's Christmas time, and I'm bunking by a man who happened to be black. His last name was Gray. Unbelievable. But this guy, he was so good. He taught me the spoons, you know. No, Delby, the got the shades of the soup goes down. He could also soup down. Oh, so he taught me the spoons. We would sing and dance, and he was great. And while we were there, you know, it was Christmas. And we still had 2 more weeks of jump school before we would be assigned to some other post. And we had a leave. You could take a leave for 2 weeks. I lived in Minneapolis. I ain't going anywhere. I don't have any money. So I'm going to stay on base. My buddy Gray, he lives just about 100 and 200 miles south. Okay? So I said to Gray, "Oh, what are you doing? Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to go home, say the friends, you know." And then he starts explaining to me that when he goes, he's got to sit on the back of a bus and drink at some other fountain. And I'm listening to him. Honest to God, I said this. I said, "Gray, what are you telling me?" He said, and he says this. He says, "What planet are you living on?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Griff, don't you know that when I leave here, they call me a nigger? And I got to sit on the back of a bus and go to the bathroom in some other restaurant or whatever?" And I said, "Oh, you got to be kidding me." He said, "Where are you at?" I'm 18 years old, and not one person, my father, my mother, my teachers, ever told me a thing about this. And he looked at me and he goes, "Where are you from?" And then I thought, did Sister Georgette tell me that? She taught history. Did Mr. Wanamaker teach that? And I thought, wait a second. Nobody taught me this. I didn't know anything about that. But he kind of said, "You know, Griff, I don't know where you live in, man." And I'm thinking, that can't be. That moral development, mean to tell me I don't even know this? It isn't my fault. My dad used the word jigaboo. We had those toes, you know, those black toes. I hate to use the word. You know the word I'm talking about. Jigaboo. And I'm thinking, what is that? And here it is, this guy who's a great friend of mine, great entertainer, like Mitch. Okay. Anyway, but I finally said to myself, this is unbelievable. Now, I am no longer at a 2. Dave Griffin is mad. I'm thinking, you mean to tell me the laws of this country say you can't ride in the front of a bus? And I'm endorsing that as a military man? I have sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States as a soldier, and I'm protecting what? Crap! And I'm thinking, what am I doing? Well, I don't know if you've ever had a 3. I had a 3. And it came aware. And then what happened? Chopsticks and tickets. I'm in Korea. I'm in Korea, right up in the front line for 1 year, and I'm up there, and once a week they had a movie. Here's the tickets. The tickets were 10 cents. We saw, oh, by the way, they gave you a movie a week, but you could see it 5 times. It's the same movie every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm sitting right up by the Panmunjom Im Jong-gung in the 4th Reconnaissance Squadron up there. And there's some black guys there, and who's there is Korean soldiers excellent Korean soldiers who were assigned to our unit. There's only 200 of us, and there's about 20 of them. They are great soldiers, but they could speak fluently Korean and English. In case we caught some bad guys coming across the zone, they would interview them. And they were great guys. So I'm taking karate, and I'm in this thing, and the show starts at 7 o'clock. But I'm over in the gym or this thing, and it's like 10 after 7. So I'm late. So I run over there and I go to buy my ticket. And this guy's name is Sergeant White. Ooh, this man. His name is Sergeant White. And I go in there and he's there with this booth. I give him my 10 cents. He gives me a ticket. And I look around and here are these Korean soldiers standing in the lobby. And I said, we're saying hello. I said, well, why aren't you in the movie? The movie started. It's 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You know what they said? We can't go in. What do you mean you can't go in? Sergeant White won't let us go in. I said, why? So I go over to White. I go over, right? He's in the booth. Oh, I say, White, why can't they go in the movie? He says, well, it's packed. Packed. So I went in, opened the door. There were 3 people in there. It could hold like 100. I come back, what are you, Pat? He said, look, Griffin, and he shows me his rank. He was a sergeant. I was a E4. He goes, the gooks stay out until I let them in. The gooks. So Dave Griffin says, okay. I told my Korean buddies, stay here. I ran. I'm a 3 now. I ran all the way up a hill to Colonel William D. Lynch, and I worked for Lynch. I was his secretary. I was lead, guy secretary. And I said, Colonel Lynch, and I'm stuttering, Colonel Lynch, this White. He said, what? And so he called his Jeep driver, and the Jeep driver is there, and I was with Lynch. Yes, coming down the road fast. And we go in there. And boy, did he rag on that Sergeant White. Sergeant White lost 2 ranks. 2. And I just cheered like, yeah, I did something right. I was in a 3. I didn't care if he was Korean or not. The rules should apply to everybody, not just Yankee Doodle dandies. And so guess what? I didn't know it. I went to Seoul, Korea on invitation, and all those Korean soldiers, they brought me to a party on my behalf. And we had chopstick, we were eating food and everything and singing songs and dancing. And they gave me a cake in a thank you for supporting some principles of moral righteousness. And I thought that was my first experience of trying to find morals that apply to everybody. But it took a risk. And that's why I got these ladders here. In a level 2, I'm a little higher. I'm making a little smarter. Okay? I see the world a little better. When I'm at a 1, I'm way down here. I'm just a little kid. But this ladder, if I'm a 3 and I'm up here, it's risky. I could get hurt. I could fall down. But I'm seeing a better picture of the world. Now, I'm going to ask you. I'll point it out. You don't expect a 4-year-old to be climbing ladders. It's dangerous. They're stuck in themselves. No matter what the moral code. It's just either prey or gain or loss. Here, I'm in it, but are the principles universal or only for Yankee Doodles? Or is it only for Duluthians? Or is it only for girls? Or is it only for boys? Girls, you couldn't even vote. Women, I should say female. You couldn't even vote until the 1920s. That's ridiculous. If anybody would think that would be a morally good code, just think of that, ladies. How terrible that was, that your ancestors back, mom and dad, grandpa and grandma. Now, I got one more thing to do. To show you something, these are two dolls. I don't know if you can, one's black and one's white. Okay. By the way, trying to find, these dolls are important because they end up on a Supreme Court case. And what the dolls are, a guy by, oh, I forget his name. It was a black psychologist, and his wife was also black. And they did a study. And what they did is they got two little dolls. Now, all of the people they were talking to were black kids, all black. Okay? Everyone was black. And they weren't dressed like this. In fact, they just had a diaper on them. So you couldn't tell it was a boy or a girl. Does that make sense? All right. And what they did is, by the way, when they did the experiment, there was no black doll on the market. They had to take a white doll and paint it because they didn't even have it. This is 1952. Okay. So what they did is they went and they brought a bunch of black children, black kids, all black, no white. And they asked them 4 questions, and they filmed this. And they asked them, which of the babies look like you? And the kids would say, well, the black one. Well, I'm filming the baby. And then they asked them, well, which one is the good doll versus the bad doll? What do you think the answers were? You know what the answer was. Almost 80% said the black doll was the bad doll. And here they were black. And even some of the kids filmed were so angry at being black like that black doll, they started crying because they didn't want to be black and bad. That study was eventually brought to the Supreme Court of the United States in the Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas case in 1954. The Chief Justice was Earl Warren, and he was just appointed Chief Justice by Dwight David Eisenhower in 1952, I think. I may have my dates back because I haven't taught history for a while. And that study that was brought to the attention of the Supreme Court justices made the significant difference when they finally ruled you could not separate children by color because you were destroying their, is it the 10th Amendment or the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, the federal rights of every person is entitled to the federal rights. The study that made the difference to the Supreme Court justice, and they talked about it, was the study of the black children. This is a level 1 experience. And the justices said, even though they learned it and they didn't realize they were learning it in step 1, they still felt that way when they were adults. They were unhappy about being a black American. And the Supreme Court ruled on that and used that study as part of their evidence. That made the big difference of Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. Now, it took another 2 years before states would actually change. Okay, we know that. And you remember who was the governor of, was it Alabama? He called out the federal troops. George Wallace, thank you. George Wallace called out the federal troops to stop those 9 people. And by the way, Kamala Harris, our vice president right now, was part of that experience. She was one of those students. So what I'm showing you is moral development takes time. It goes from simple to complex, but things you learn here in step one can be everlasting for the rest of your life. Just think of our racial problem we're having today. We're still struggling with it. Why? Because some people still think black is bad. White, you're right. In fact, when I grew up, this is what I was taught. If you're white, you're right. If you're brown, you can stick around. And if you're black, you get your butt back. We had that even in the military. And guess what, folks? We're still struggling with that in 2021. Where are the people making the laws? Are they making laws at 2? Are these the people making the rules? They're still stuck at 2? Now, I would argue the people who make the rules should be 3. And you don't get to 3. You don't get on Mount Rushmore being a 2. Yeah, you know. In fact, thank God George Washington and Jefferson are 2 up there, and you know they were willing to say no, we're going to create a whole new system of government, rules, regulations, rights. We're going to do it, man. And they voted. By the way, John Hancock, who signed in the middle, he got to sign first and put it right in the middle. He said, now the king can see the damn thing. And he also said, folks, we're going to hang together here. You know, and Ben Franklin even said, you're right. So if we don't win, this is our death sentence. They're going to take us back and kill us. Now, this is an age-related model. If you're going to be a 3 and you're going to run for office, you got to be 25 years old if you're going to be a representative at the national level. You got to be 30 if you're a senator. You got to be 35 if you're a president. By the way, Supreme Court justices, no limit, no requirement for age. None. I can be 4-year-old. No, you can't be. You know what I'm trying to say. But there is no requirement for Supreme Court judges as far as age. But we all agree. And Kohlberg said, you start here, some move here, and some keep going. Now, I like to ask all of you, do you think we're at a moral place right now where everybody in this country has permitted the same rights, regulations, and acceptances? Well, I'll tell you what, I was brought up with sisters, and they were talented people. Bonnie and Carol and Betty stuttered so bad, but I will tell you, they've been always treated like crap. Couldn't do this. My wife couldn't even play a sport. Wasn't allowed. She couldn't even play a sport. Now, Kohlberg says it doesn't matter what moral code you're professing. How did you learn it? How did you acquire it? Can you be a moral person at level 3 and be an atheist? Kohlberg would say yes. It's your principles. It's what you're endorsing. Now, if you're stuck in 2, that only people that matter are Yankee Doodles, that's it. I will tell you, most people are traveling. Mitch, my special friend, he's been down to Costa Rica. I taught in Britain. People are traveling all over the world. This world is becoming more connected. And yet we have, I don't know how many people in the UN, how many states, 200, 190, something like that. So the world of tomorrow, in my opinion, is a world of more complexity. You know, now I'll be honest. If you go to Saudi Arabia, ladies, You're not driving any car alone. Mm-mm, mm-mm. And I've been to Iraq and Iran and Persia. I've been to Afghanistan. And I know the standard there, especially for women. It's when Donna and I were there, when she was out, she had to wear a thing. When we went into the mosque to look, they asked, was she on her period? Because she was unclean if she wasn't, she was asked not to go in. Now, I don't see, maybe I'm being blunt, I don't see that as an evil thing. It's human beings, for God's sake. Anyway, that's the moral development. Kohlberg studied it. He found it primarily by asking this one question, Heinz's moral dilemmas. And then he listened and he wrote down how they thought about it. What was their reasons? And then he locked them into 1, self-centered, pain and pleasure. 2, group-orientated. Yeah, you got a code. You got the 10 commandments. You got or are they the 10 suggestions? Or do you have that, whatever? By the way, thou shalt not kill, I always thought should be thou shalt not murder, because people are killing people all the time. Maybe it meant that I'd write it, thou shalt not murder. I don't know, but that would be me. But, and then there's a 3. If you're studying Freud, he would say this is the id, this is the ego, and this is the superego. Where you're thinking more of your people over here are willing to die for some principle, justice. Well, that's the model. Maybe you would like to comment about it, whether you think it's appropriate, it's where you've been from. That's my Reader's Digest on it. But remember, I hope you remember the value of the dolls, because what you learn as a child, boy, it's hard to erase. In fact, I'm fortunate, my son-in-law and my daughter work with the mentally people with trouble. And you know what? They're coming into their clinic from times past here that are troubling them right now. And they're trying to help them get well. Sometimes they have to say, enough. I won't do that anymore. No. And it's hard because people are saying, but that's what I was brought up for. That's how I was brought up. Well, I appreciate you willing to listen. And I'm sure you've had stories akin to these. But when I've taught this in front of, well, high school students in the junior and senior year, I'm going to tell you right now, those kids get it. They're smart enough to know what's going on. And they're this is a model very receptive to a lot of students. And it's something that I didn't make up. I'm just following somebody else's example of Kohlberg. And I like him a lot. But other than that, it's been nice to present to you. If we had a class where we could knit a little better than this, but anyway, thank you. And
any comments? Let's open it up. I know it's getting close to 2:00, but it's been such an interesting topic that I know that we'd all just love to hear from each other and hear of any comments you have or thoughts on, many of you are in the same age group. So I think so many of us can relate to that. Are you fixing that, Lucy? Or?
I don't, it's this person.
Okay, a person with a phone, what do they need to do?
Mute.
If you have that phone image, what's the number over there, Lucy? They need to mute.
The two, I don't know, I can't read it.
Oh, they're muted now.
Okay.
Okay, now how do we get the screen back? Oh, we're up on the top right. I can see us. Just a second.
I'm talking and I'm muted. Do you want me to spotlight you again? I was
Yes.
spotlighting you. I'll spotlight you again. I thought you had questions.
Well, we want comments from the audience. If anybody would like to comment or just give their appreciation or whatever you'd like to say, we'd love to hear from you.
I'd like to comment. Hi, Dave.
Well, hi, how are you doing?
You're quite the actor. I always think the greatest gift I was ever given in my life was to have very wonderful, intelligent, kind, loving parents. And your models, it's kind of distressing to see it's so important for kids to have a good start. And that's just the luck of the draw, you know? Who are your parents and what are the lessons they give you? And then your story in the beginning, that's just a sideline about the alligator and the fear that you have. I want to steer you to Storyline online to read or to look and listen to I Need My Monster. Wonderful story.
Great.
My little great-grandchildren want to hear it over and over. So thanks for coming.
Okay. And thank you.
Mhm.
This is Katie Kettle. I found it incredibly interesting, and it just kind of sorts out everything that's happened in your life and other people's lives. I just really enjoyed your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Katie. Any other comments? Anybody like to share? Does anybody have an experience at number 3 here that they'd like to share or thoughts on that?
Well, this is Katie again, in a small part, one time my daughter was getting her, or she was going to take her driver's test. And so I was in the lobby at the center, and there was a guy there, and he happened to be Black. He had a check he needed to cash, but he couldn't cash the check without an ID, but he needed the money from the check to get the ID. And so I was listening to this conversation, and I thought, well, this is just bizarre, you know. I mean, he's in a catch-22. So he went out, and then I followed him, and I said, I'll pay for your driver's license. And so then we went back in, and he got, was able to get it. But I just thought to me, it was a 3. I just couldn't let this go on.
Good.
To let him go, because I mean, and I just wanted to like stand up there, and I didn't, in front of everybody, say, can't we take up a collection or something? But I just took care of it. So I was kind of proud of myself that I stepped up.
Absolutely. You should be proud of that. I would say, I wish more people would do those small things to show people that this is bigger than us.
Mhm.
Definitely.
I have something that I would like to share. When my husband and I were in college, we weren't married yet, but we were going to go from Austin to visit his parents in Fort Worth. And normally we were able to catch a ride, or somebody would come get us, but we had to take the bus. So we got on the bus in Austin, and then, it stopped all along the way, and it was a pretty full bus. And so there was one seat available on this bus, and it was the one that was right in front of us. And there was a woman who was sitting in the window seat, and the other seat, the only seat on the bus, was empty. And one passenger got on. It was an African-American man. And so he walked up to this seat, and he said, the woman was pretending to be asleep. And he said, may I sit down? No, nothing. He said, ma'am, may I sit down? She did not say anything. And after a few minutes of him asking her if he could sit down, I got up, went and sat down in that seat next to her, and he took my seat next to my husband.
Good for you.
So, that was my first experience as a 3, having a 3 moment.
I have a comment,
Go ahead.
kind of going back to 1 and 2, I guess. My parents were Lithuanian immigrants, and they certainly felt a lot of discrimination when they came to this country. They called them dirty Lugans and other sort of things. But you know, oddly enough, they didn't think it was unusual that they spoke poorly of Black folk, which I thought was really, really particular. And it didn't seem to be a real personal thing. It just seemed to be kind of pervasive at that time. But you know, you can grow beyond a 1. And I thank my elementary school teachers. They were absolutely wonderful in instilling the fact that, you know, no matter what color your skin, you're all the same inside. So never underestimate the power of teachers.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Ellie. Thank you. Any other comments? Anything you'd like to comment on about the world today in 2021 and related to this, and how perhaps, you know, where do we see ourselves going? Any comments on that?
Well, I think it's really concerning today with the situation that's going on in politics, and it seems the increasing of white supremacy. I think that's very damaging to our country. And how to shift out of that, I don't know. It's a little bit scary.
Well, may I add something?
Mhm.
When the founding fathers won the war, and then they decided to try to start over with some new principles, and they wrote the Declaration, and then they decided to come up with, I guess, a code of conduct. And they asked, the colonists wouldn't sign unless they had some rights. And so I think it was Madison. I think it was. And he said to the colonists, send me your list. Send me the things that you would like to see added. And they did. And they sent him. And the way I understood the story from my professor in history, he had all these on his desk. And he started to look for similarities between them. He had some from Rhode Island, he had some from whatever. And then he condensed them into the 10 that we're familiar with. And he sent them back. And he said, does this sound like what you're looking for? Some rights, the right to bear arms or whatever. And they agreed that it was, and then they signed the document. Now, what they really did, most professors will tell you of government, what was the key to the document wasn't that. The key to the document was the amendments. They gave a clear description how you could change the document. So as it grows, like we grow and we go, and we get better maybe. And so we've changed that original document from the 10. We've added 19 more. Just think about that. We used to have slavery.
Mhm.
Just think, you could buy and sell a human being. Now, can you imagine how our country would existed without those 19 new ones? Now, there are some people on our earth and in our country that are not happy with some of those amendments, because they see them as a movement away from something they think good
Mhm.
or something not so good. But I will tell you, if we didn't have those 19 new ones, this country probably wouldn't be standing yet. Just think of the Civil War itself. 500 and some thousand dead in the Civil War. 500 and some thousand. Brother fighting brother. Yet, that's why Lincoln gets on the hill. And by the way, the reason why he's there is most people get it wrong. If you ask kids, and I ask them, my own students, why is Lincoln on the mountain? And you know what the answer was? freed the slaves. That's not why the group picked him. They picked him because he kept our country together. That's why he was chosen. Now, he did something about, the black and the white too. That's good, but you got to remember, George was there because he's the first president, and Jefferson's there because he wrote the darn document, and then Lincoln's there because he kept the family together. Now we're struggling again about keeping that family together. But I will tell you this, I don't know, myself growing up, this color issue, I've seen, I was talking about a mortal sin. I grew up in that environment, okay? To me, if there's a mortal sin, it's our inability to deal with color. I just don't know. And it's something that it's given to us by our God. And why would God prefer? I don't get it. I just don't get it. But we're still struggling with that. And the next one is women's rights, in my opinion. My sisters were brilliant and bright, and they were held back because why? They were born with a uterus? What is this? I don't get it. In fact, even in the church where I was at, I'm not faulting some of the best teachers, because I went to a Catholic school, were the nuns. They were fantastic people. They treated me like they always, oh, hunky Davy, 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 because I stuttered. And they'd always, oh, Davy, 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 Davy. And I got so many hugs, and I got some hits by the ruler, to be honest, with the nuns. But why couldn't they be a priest? I never got it. Didn't make sense. They were out there doing all the teaching, all the cuddling, all the work, all the stuff, and somehow they couldn't change that water into wine because they didn't have. I still struggle with that. I don't get it.
Well, I have one thing to say, and I said it to a Baptist minister one time when I asked if he ever had women in leadership positions. And he said, oh, no, the Bible says blah, 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 but I'm open to it if God changes my heart. And I looked at him and I said, I don't think God makes mistakes when he puts brains in bodies. And he absolutely didn't. He couldn't say anything else. That was the end of the conversation. But we did join a Baptist church that was a lot more, and I'm a deacon, and I led the.
Oh, there you go. Good.
So and we had a woman pastor.
There you
So
go. See, that's a new change.
yes.
You got some religious groups are opening that door. By the way, you may know this, but I know a lot about my Catholic background. It was up until around 1200 AD that priests were allowed to marry. There was like 40 popes who had wives and children. So they changed that rule around 1200 years after the death of Jesus. So up until that time, and if you're an Orthodox Christian on the Eastern Orthodox, you can marry and have children. The one thing you can't do is if you want to become a bishop, I think in their church, you got to be single. I don't know, what's the women, what's that doing? I don't get it. But anyway, that's the rule. But by the way, this is also true. If you're a Orthodox Christian and married, and you want to convert to Roman Catholicism, you can bring the kids, you can bring the wife, you can bring them all over. So they will let you join the Catholic because you're already married in a different wing of the church, but they'll accept you. So if you want to be married, go to the Orthodox, get confirmed, and then come back, and then you're in. Okay, but that's the truth. Well, look, I hope you've appreciated it. I will tell you, it's one of the best units in high school the kids want to talk about. Because they'll talk about this for 3-4 days. They'll tell stories of uncles and aunts and and they traveled. So thank you, everybody. And I think we're gonna call it a day. Bye.
Thanks, Dave. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you.